My brother Marcus had always been different. While I followed the expected path, college, steady job, suburban house, Marcus chose art, travel, and what our parents called irresponsible life choices. For years, they tolerated his unconventional lifestyle. When he backpacked through Europe instead of getting a business degree, they grumbled but paid his credit card bills. When he spent 2 years teaching English in rural Thailand, they complained about missing holidays but sent care packages. But when Marcus came home last November with nothing but a backpack and stories of spiritual awakening in a Tibetan monastery, their patience finally snapped. "I've found my purpose," Marcus explained during what would become our last family dinner. "I want to use my art to help people, to bring healing through creativity." Dad's face darkened. "Art doesn't pay bills, Marcus. You're 32 years old. When are you going to grow up and contribute something meaningful to society?" "I am contributing. I've been working with trauma survivors, using art therapy to—" "Art therapy?" Mom laughed bitterly. "That's not a real job. That's playing with crayons and calling it medicine." I watched Marcus's face fall, but he pressed on. "I've seen what creativity can do for people who've lost hope. In Tibet, I learned techniques that combine meditation with artistic expression. It's revolutionary." "It's nonsense," Dad interrupted. "You've wasted your entire 20s chasing fantasies. Now you come home broke, asking us to support your delusions." "I'm not asking for money. I just need a place to stay while I get established." "No." The word cut through the room like a blade. "We're done enabling your irresponsibility." Marcus turned to me, hope flickering in his eyes. I was the practical one, the one who'd always mediated between him and our parents. But before I could speak, Dad continued. "And don't think you can guilt your sister into supporting you either. Lisa has her own life, her own responsibilities." The conversation spiraled downward from there. Marcus tried to explain his plans, starting a nonprofit organization, developing programs for veterans with PTSD, creating art therapy curricula for schools. But our parents saw only failure and embarrassment. "You're a grown man living like a college dropout," Mom said coldly. "We raised you better than this. You raised me to be honest, compassionate, and to help others." Marcus replied quietly. "That's exactly what I'm doing." "You're being naive and selfish," Dad shot back. "Real adults don't chase dreams. They face reality." The final blow came when Marcus asked if he could stay in his old room for a few weeks while apartment hunting. "Absolutely not," Dad said. "We turned your room into Mom's craft space years ago. There's no place for you here anymore. It's December. It's freezing outside." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before spending 2 years meditating in a cave." I watched my parents throw my brother out into a snowstorm without a second thought. Marcus stood on the front porch with his single backpack, looking lost and heartbroken. "Marcus," I called out before he could leave. "Come stay with me." Dad grabbed my arm. "Lisa, don't enable him. He needs to learn. He needs shelter," I said firmly, pulling away. "Come on, Marcus. Let's go." As we drove to my house, Marcus was quiet. Finally, he spoke. "I'm sorry to burden you with this." "You're not a burden. You're my brother." "Dad's right, though. I don't have much to offer right now." I glanced at him. "Marcus, you spent 2 years learning from Tibetan monks about healing trauma through art. You've traveled to 12 countries, speak 4 languages, and have more life experience than most people accumulate in a lifetime. How is that not valuable? Try explaining that to a landlord." Over the next 3 months, Marcus lived in my guest room and slowly began rebuilding his life. What I discovered during this time amazed me. My irresponsible brother had spent years quietly helping people in ways our family never bothered to understand. He showed me letters from veterans who credited his art therapy sessions with saving their lives. Photos from orphanages in Thailand, where his teaching had transformed children's outlooks. Emails from trauma survivors who'd found healing through techniques he'd developed. "Why didn't you ever tell Mom and Dad about this?" I asked, reading through testimonials that brought tears to my eyes. Marcus shrugged. "They wouldn't have believed it. To them, if it doesn't come with a salary and a title, it's not real." While staying with me, Marcus worked part-time at a local coffee shop and spent his evenings developing his nonprofit proposal. He was applying for grants, reaching out to hospitals and veterans organizations, building something meaningful from nothing. I helped where I could, using my background in nonprofit administration to review his paperwork and connect him with potential funding sources. What Marcus was proposing, integrated art therapy programs for trauma recovery, was genuinely innovative. This could revolutionize how we treat PTSD, I told him after reviewing his research. You're not just making art, you're developing medical interventions. Try telling Dad that. Our parents maintained their position that they were teaching Marcus responsibility by cutting him off. They refused to see him, take his calls, or acknowledge his existence. When I mentioned his progress, they changed the subject. He'll come crawling back when he realizes how the real world works, Dad said dismissively. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in March, everything changed. I was working from home when the doorbell rang. A man in an expensive suit stood on my porch, holding a leather briefcase and looking somewhat nervous. Ms. Turner? I'm looking for Marcus Turner. I was told he might be staying here. My protective instincts kicked in. Who's asking? I'm Jonathan Mitchell, senior partner at Mitchell, Hayes & Associates. We're estate attorneys. He handed me a business card with a prestigious downtown address. I've been trying to locate Marcus for several weeks regarding an inheritance matter. My heart sank. Inheritance? Did someone we know pass away? May I speak with Marcus directly? This is rather sensitive. I called Marcus from the coffee shop, and he arrived 20 minutes later, still wearing his work apron. Mr. Mitchell looked him up and down, taking in the casual clothes and service industry uniform. You are Marcus Turner, son of Robert and Linda Turner? Yes. And you spent time recently in Tibet, studying at the Sera Monastery? Marcus looked puzzled. Yes, how did you? Mr. Turner, I represent the estate of Tenzin Norbu, a Tibetan refugee who passed away 6 months ago in Switzerland. The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Tenzin? He's dead. I'm sorry for your loss. It's clear you knew him well. Marcus sank into a chair, tears forming in his eyes. He was my teacher, my mentor. I spent almost a year studying under him. He taught me everything about healing trauma through art and meditation. Mr. Mitchell opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Mr. Norbu was quite wealthy, though he lived very simply. He owned significant property in Switzerland, held investments worth millions, and possessed one of the world's most valuable collections of Tibetan religious art. I felt my breath catch. Millions. When he fled Tibet in 1959, Mr. Norbu managed to save numerous priceless artifacts from destruction. He spent decades quietly building wealth in European markets while preserving Tibetan cultural treasures. Marcus was staring at the lawyer. Why are you telling me this? Because, Mr. Turner, Tenzin Norbu left everything to you. The room went completely silent. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. That's impossible, Marcus whispered. Mr. Mitchell pulled out a document. This is his will, written in both Tibetan and English. He states that you were the only student who truly understood his vision of using art and meditation to heal trauma. He believed you would carry on his work. How much are we talking about? I asked, my voice barely audible. The total estate is valued at approximately $47 million. Marcus went pale and had to grip the chair arms to stay upright. However, Mr. Mitchell continued, there are conditions. The inheritance comes with the requirement that you establish and run the Tenzin Norbu Foundation for Trauma Recovery through traditional arts. The foundation must be operational within 6 months, and you must personally oversee its programs. Marcus found his voice. He wanted me to create exactly what I've been planning. More than that, he's provided you with the resources to make it a reality on a scale you never imagined. Mr. Mitchell pulled out photographs of an enormous estate in the Swiss Alps. This will be your headquarters. The art collection alone is worth $20 million. The rest is for operational funding. I stared at my brother, my irresponsible brother who just inherited enough money to fund his healing work for decades. There's one more thing, Mr. Mitchell said. Mr. Norbu left specific instructions about your family. He was aware that they disapproved of your path and had cut you off financially. How could he know that? You told him during your last month of study. He wrote extensively about Western family dynamics that punish compassion and spiritual growth. Mr. Mitchell pulled out another document. He's left specific provisions regarding your parents. My stomach clenched. What kind of provisions? They're explicitly excluded from benefiting from your inheritance in any way. If you attempt to share the wealth with family members who rejected your calling, the entire estate reverts to Tibetan refugee organizations. Marcus stared at the papers. He protected the money from them. He protected your mission from people who didn't understand its value, Mr. Mitchell corrected, including your immediate family. After Mr. Mitchell left, Marcus and I sat in stunned silence for an hour. $47 million, I finally said, to do exactly what I've been trying to do all along. Marcus shook his head in wonder. Tenzin always said the universe provides what's needed when the intention is pure. Are you going to tell Mom and Dad? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. They threw me out in a snowstorm because they thought my life's work was worthless. Now, they'll want me part of it because there's money involved. But they're still your parents. And I'm still the son they rejected for following my calling. 2 weeks later, the story broke in the local newspaper. Local man inherits millions for humanitarian work. The article detailed Marcus's inheritance and his plans for the Trauma Recovery Foundation. Our parents called within hours. Marcus, Mom's voice was bright and excited. We saw the news. We're so proud of you. Are you? Marcus asked quietly. Of course. We always knew you'd find your way. We were just worried about you. Dad got on the line. Son, we should talk about managing this kind of wealth. You'll need financial advisors, legal protection. Lucky for you, your old man knows something about investments. Do you? Marcus said. Last I heard, art therapy wasn't a real job. Silence. We were just concerned about your stability, Mom said carefully. But this inheritance proves we were wrong to worry. No, Marcus said firmly. This inheritance proves that someone who actually understood my work valued it enough to fund it. You still don't understand what I do or why it matters. But $47 million is not yours, Marcus interrupted. Tenzin specifically protected the money from family members who rejected my calling. Even if I wanted to share it with you, I legally can't. The silence stretched until Dad's voice came back, cold and calculating. That's ridiculous. Family inheritances can't have those kinds of restrictions. This one does. Would you like me to have my attorney send you a copy of the will? After they hung up, Marcus turned to me. They didn't call to apologize for throwing me out. They didn't call to say they were wrong about my work. They called because they saw dollar signs. What are you going to do? Exactly what I was always going to do. But now I can do it right. Marcus moved to Switzerland 3 months later to establish the foundation. Within a year, the Tenzin Norbu Foundation was running programs in 12 countries, helping thousands of trauma survivors heal through art and meditation. Our parents never apologized for their treatment of Marcus. They spent months consulting lawyers, trying to find ways to contest the will or claim some portion of the inheritance. When that failed, they attempted to reconcile, suddenly interested in understanding Marcus's important work. Marcus was polite but distant during their visits to the foundation. He gave them tours, explained the programs, showed them testimonials from people whose lives had been transformed. But he never let them forget that they'd rejected all of this when there was no money attached to it. The saddest part, Marcus told me during one of my visits to Switzerland, is that they still don't understand why this work matters. They only understand that it's worth $47 million. Do you regret how things turned out with them? Marcus looked out at the mountains where he'd built a healing center that served hundreds of trauma survivors each year. I regret that they chose money over compassion. But I don't regret following my calling, even when they couldn't see its value. Sometimes the people who reject your dreams are the ones who need them most. But sometimes the universe has other plans for your gifts, plans that don't require anyone's approval except your own. And sometimes being thrown out in the cold is exactly what you need to find your way to warmth.